Hello. In this short video, I want to look at a new feature that is available in the recently released version 3 of Cake, and that is the ability to specify multiple entry targets for an execution of Cake. So what am I talking about here? So let's use an example. Now, in this example, I've got a relatively contrived example of how you would execute a Cake script, but hopefully it'll be enough to indicate exactly what can and can't be done with this new feature. So I've got a task A that does literally something, which is nothing. I've got a task B that also does nothing, but has a dependency on another task that is C, and C also has a does method that does exactly nothing. And what we've got here is a default task that is the entry point for the default execution of Cake. Now, everything up to and including this point should be familiar to you in terms of how you would construct a Cake script. But the one difference here is that typically, as the final line within a Cake script, you would have a run target method. And that run target method takes exactly one argument, and that is the name of the target that is wanting to be invoked. Now, you would have typically you would have that as a command line parameter that you would pass in with a default value when it's not passed in, and then it would default to the entry point, which is typically the default task. Now, in this newest version of Cake, we've got a second method, and that's the run targets method. And that takes as an argument a collection of target names rather than a singular one. So what you can do is you can specify multiple input targets, and if you don't specify one, you have the entry point, which in this case is just the default one. So this is best illustrated by example. So if I go over to my PowerShell script here and I say .NET-cake, and I'm going to run .NET-cake, and I'm going to run the entry script. And I'm not going to pass in a target at this point. So what we can do here is what we'll see is it's running the default task, which has no other dependencies, so it literally does nothing. But what we can do, similar to what we could do before, is we could specify a singular target, and in this case, I want to run target A. So by passing that in as a command line argument, we're then executing the A target, which again does nothing. If I wanted to execute another specific one, I could run B. B has a dependency on C, so C runs first, it runs B, and it works in exactly the same way as it did before. The thing that we've introduced now, though, is that you can specify both target A and target B. And the order that you pass them in at the command line is the order that they will be executed, and then the standard dependency graph for those tasks will then be adhered to. So here I'm specifying target A and target B. So what we'll see here is that we first run A, then we run B, but B has a dependency on C, so it becomes A, C, B. So this is a really interesting feature, and it came from a community contribution. So thank you very much to our community for adding this into this new version of Cake. But it opens up different potentials for perhaps you've got a Cake script that has multiple entry points because you might want to do a build, you might want to do a publish, you might want to do a deploy. All of those are different entry points, but depending on where and when the build is executing, you might want to run both this one and this one. Now you could do that through configuration within, say it's a build system you're using. You might have two executions of the Cake script. You run the first task and then you run the second one. But what this allows you to do in a single execution of Cake is to perform both operations. So you've got two or more entry points that you can specify for how you want that script to be executed. It's a really interesting feature. And that's all I've got to say about it. But if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. But for now, thank you very much.